Welcome to the PHP Project Training Series tutorials. This is building a page hit counter, part 1. We're going to be building a page hit counter with PHP and HTML. This is part 1 of a 4-part series on building a page hit counter using PHP and HTML. Alright, so in this tutorial we're going to be building a PHP hit counter using PHP and HTML. In this part 1 of the tutorial series, we'll walk through what we're going to build. So the steps we're going to follow for this particular part of the tutorial, we're going to confirm we have our WAMP server up and running, and I'm going to actually go through and talk to you about the WAMP server. If you don't have the WAMP server installed on your machine, I'm going to give you the link to go and get it. There actually is a tutorial under the tools section of the website that it goes into great detail as to how to install a WAMP server and why we use that type of testing environment. This is the actual link that will take us to that web page, which I'm going to show you in a minute. We're going to go ahead and bring that up so that you can see what we're going to get from the Apache Friends website. Then we're going to build our web pages. We're actually going to build a 4-page website that we can actually go back and forth between the pages, and we'll write a PHP script that's actually going to count the hits as we enter and exit each one of those pages. So the first thing we're going to do, let's go and look at this WAMP server and what it is. I've got WAMP running on my desktop. As usual, I actually run the WAMP server from my testing environment. And you'll notice I've got my Apache server up and running. And I've also got the MySQL and the PHP portion of that running. This is the interface that the XAMPP server gives you once you get it loaded. You'll notice I've got my XAMPP control panel down here in the corner of my desktop for my training tutorials. Let's go to the website. This is the actual Apache Friends website where you can actually get XAMPP for download. And you'll notice that we've got a bunch of different flavors. We got XAMPP for Linux, for Windows, for the Mac OS X, and for Solaris. You would download the one that's appropriate for the type of terminal that you're actually going to install your development environment on, and then go ahead and install it. It's very simple to install. Just follow the on-screen instructions. Having a development environment, especially when you're writing in PHP, is a big advantage to trying to do this with a live web server, because it's a lot easier to actually get the stuff written on your development environment, get it all tested, and then upload it or FTP it up to your live web server. So you need to have XAMPP up and running in order to get through these tutorials so that you can actually follow all the demonstrations we're going to do and that your stuff will work out the same as ours. Having a testing and development environment is very important. Let me go ahead and show you. Once you get this installed on your computer, on your development computer, let me go ahead and show you the file structure and where your files will actually be located. If you go into your C drive, it will have created a directory called XAMPP. And inside that directory, there's an htdocs folder. This is where all the files that are going to go that we're actually going to be using to test while we build this PHP hit counter. I've actually created a folder inside there called PHP Hit Counter, and inside that folder I want you to go ahead and create the following file structure. I want you to create a folder for CSS. You notice I put underscore CSS. I'm going to create a folder for scripts, and again I put the underscore scripts, and I'm going to create a folder for images. All of these, we may not use all of these folders for this particular tutorial, but this is the standard practice that I follow as I set up my website structure when I begin designing my websites. I always tend to have CSS directory, an image directory, and a scripts directory. A lot of people ask me, Mike, why do you use the underscore with your folders? The reason I do that, it keeps the folder structure at the top of my directory. So my folders will always be alphabetical at the top if I precede them with an underscore. And also, believe it or not, it helps a little bit in security. Most people don't realize, or most people don't expect, for a folder name to begin with an underscore. So if people are trying to root around your website, trying to locate things, not likely they're going to think about putting an underscore prior to the name of the folder. Sometimes I'll even use a double underscore depending upon how far up in the directory structure I want it and how many files and folders I actually have in that directory structure for that particular website. So this is something I always do as I set up my tutorials. Something I always do is to set up my website. I build my directory structure first. So keep in mind we've got inside the htdocs, which is where we put the root folder of our XAMPP development platform. I've built a folder called PHP Hit Counter, And inside that folder, I've given us a CSS folder, an images folder, and a scripts folder. And that will be at the root level of our website. All right, so we've covered the actual Apache Friends website and where you can go and get your XAMPP in the event that you need it. We talked about the fact that we have a tutorial in the tools section of the website that explains how to do all the installation of the XAMPP development environment in the event that you don't already have it installed on your computer. Next, we're going to go into building our web pages. So we've discussed and demonstrated the XAMPP testing environment. We looked at the location of the htdocs folder and how we set up that root structure for our website. So now let's go in and start building our web pages for our tutorial demonstration. All right, though, so the next step is for me to let's go ahead and create those 4 HTML pages that we talked about. We should have our testing environment up and running. So we've got XAMPP running now in our background. We've got our screens loaded. We should have our green lights telling us that the XAMPP is running. Let's go ahead and bring up my text editor. I'm going to use Sublime Text 2. This is a blank field in Sublime Text 2. You can use any good text editor for your particular machine, whether it's a Mac or a PC. Under the tools section of the website, there's a tutorial on all the different types of text editors that are available, and there is a plethora of different text editors available. I like using Sublime Text 2. I've been using it for years. It's just, I'm very comfortable with it. In the, if this is the first tutorial you viewed on the OnTarget website, I want you to notice I tend to do what's called side-by-side development. I actually have our local host up now. This is the actual directory that we just built on our local host, my PHP Hit Counter directory. Those are the folders that we created for our CSS, our images, and our scripts. And I've got my text editor on the right. So as I go ahead and develop, you'll actually be able to see these things occurring on the web browser right alongside the development environment. So the left-hand side will be the website itself, the browser, and the right-hand side will be my development environment and my text editor. If you've purchased the tutorial, you will actually have a text file with all the code in it for each particular lesson. Each part of this tutorial series will have their own code base. I'm going to go ahead and bring up this little snippet. Let's go ahead and grab this first portion to create our first page. I'm going to go ahead and paste this in our text editor. This is my standard HTML5 document. It's my base. Yes, it's page 1. And actually we're going to call this the home page of our website. And this is the text for the home page. I didn't type this in. I figured it's kind of boring watching me type. I've used some standard HTML tags. I've got an H2 tag and a paragraph tag. You can go ahead and pause the tutorial if you need to go ahead and copy this. If you don't have a copy of the exercise files, I'm going to save this in my root directory. Excuse me. Save this in the root directory of my website. And I'm just going to call this _index.php. The reason I'm giving it the .php extension is because we're going to have PHP in these pages. In order for them to be processed correctly on a web server, they have to end with the extension .php. In the event you were not aware of that. Now, if I go ahead and refresh this screen, you'll notice now we've got this index page up. I can actually bring it up, and you can see now what we've developed in this window and how it's going to appear in our web browser. Anything I were to change in this window, if I were to add a second paragraph, it's going to go ahead and copy that right below. I'm just going to put in another paragraph. If I save the changes to this file and refresh it, you'll be able to see the changes appear in our browser window. That's why I like the side-by-side development environment. I haven't seen, I don't think I've seen any other online tutorials develop in this type of an environment. I like using it because it makes it easier for the viewer to not only see what we're doing in the code window, but also how it's going to appear in the browser window just by doing a refresh. Okay, so we've saved our index.php file. Now I need to create 3 additional pages with that file. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a save as, and I'm going to save this file as page1.php. Then I'm going to do a save as and save this file as page2.php. And then I'm going to do a save as and save this file as page3.php. If I go back and I refresh my browser window going back to localhost, you'll notice now we've got our index file, page 1, page 2, and page 3. So we've actually built this 4-page website now inside of our development environment. One thing I want you to notice, the reason I put the underscore on this index file, if I were to name this index.php or home.php, it's going to run automatically as soon as I enter this PHP Hit Counter directory. By putting the underscore before it, it gives me control as to when I want to see it. In other words, it's not going to load this file until I physically click on it. If I were to just name this index, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. If I were to go in here and name this or save as index.php, and again, I'm just going over this in the event you're not aware of these types of peculiarities as you're developing for the web. Now I actually have a file in my localhost folder called index.php. As soon as I enter the directory, it's going to load that file automatically because that's how web servers work. Index.php, index.html, home.html, home.php load automatically upon entering the directory. This keeps people from getting a directory structure or doing a search on what's in your directory on a website. So when we're developing, I normally tend to name my files underscore index.php so I can see my file structure as I'm doing my development, and it only loads when I want it to load. All right, one thing I do want to do, I want to give you a heads up right away. I've gone back in, I've taken out that index.php file without my underscore, so once again, I can get into my directory without this automatically loading. Now what I want to do is I want to go in and clean up my directories a little bit, my pages, because this is our home page. So I'm just going to type this at the top. And again, this is just so we can file as we're moving around these different pages so we know where they're at. So we've got our home page set up. I'm going to go ahead and load my page 1. So I'm going to open my page 1, page 2, and page 3. And we're going to do the same thing with these. We're going to clean up these pages also. So I'm going to go to page 1 and I'm going to put up here page 1 title and page 1 text. And then I'm just going to grab this, doing Control-C to copy. And I'm just going to paste this in here. Control-V to paste on the PC. Command-V on a Mac. Then I'm going to go ahead and save those changes. Oh, can't save on the browser window. I do that a lot. All right, we're going to do the same thing here. This is page 2 title. And this is page 2. Let's go ahead and get rid of this home. And again, just cleaning our pages up so it's obvious as we're moving around the pages what page we're on. Go ahead and save that change. And I'm going to do the same thing with page 3. And this will give us a nice clean starting point for our website as we build our counter. It'll be easy for us to tell what pages we're actually looking at as we're moving around the site. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. I'm just going to do a save all. So now all my pages have been updated to reflect the proper heading, proper title, proper text, and proper tab index. So if I were to go and load this again, go back into localhost, and everything is now set. Our home page is home page, and as we put our links in, you'll see that they're going to say page 1, page 2, and page 3. All right, so the next thing we want to do now, we've got our pages created. We've created our 4 web pages, 4 that we're going to use for our counter. Now we're going to go ahead and build the links and interconnect all these pages so that we can navigate back and forth between them. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up my text editor, my Sublime Text 2. I'm going to go ahead and bring back my web server so you can see our pages. And the first thing I want to do, let's go back to our index.php. If you purchase the exercise files, you're going to have the code snippets text document inside your directory. If not, I'm going to go ahead and copy this I'm going to paste this right below our home page heading. Let me go ahead and insert this. Just an unordered list with 4 links, and you'll notice the links reference the pages that we've just created, our index.php, and actually that's going to be underscore index.php, our page 1, page 2, and page 3.php, and they're now part of our home page. I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to bring up index inside of our web browser so you can see what we've done, and it's just given us links to those 4 pages, and now we can navigate to those different pages. Obviously we can't navigate back because I haven't put it on, but now that I've got this set up correctly, I'm going to go ahead and copy this. I'm going to put it in the same place on page 1. Go ahead and clean up my indentations. I'm going to save it. I'm going to go and put it in the same place in page 2. Again, clean up my indentations. Save my file. And I'm going to do the same thing with page 3. Clean up my indentations and save my file. If you haven't purchased the tutorial, now would be a great time to pause this movie so you can actually copy one set of these UL tags with their list tags and my links, and then have that pasted into each one of your 4 pages of the sample website. I'm going to go ahead and do a save all. I'm going to go back and refresh my site. And now I should be able to navigate through all the different pages of our demonstration, going back and forth, so we can move around the sample site that we created. That's going to allow us now to start preparing it to track when pages are entered into and when they're departed, or when we leave the page, so that we can actually start building our PHP counter to count how often these pages are. Alright, so we've got our web pages all built, the site's all set up. The last thing we're going to do in part 1 of this tutorial is we're going to create our count.txt file, which is actually going to be the text file where we're going to store the information on the number of hits each page is receiving. So what I want you to do is I want you to go into your HTT docs folder. I want you to open up that folder where we've got our files that we've just created. Open up your scripts folder, and inside that folder I want you to create a new text file. This is a plain text file, and I want you to call it count, C-O-U-N-T, .txt. That will be a very plain, nothing but a text file. That's all it is. You can use Notepad to edit these. It's going to use script editors. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different things you can use to edit your text file, but we just want a plain text file inside our scripts folder. Count.txt. And the next thing that's very important is the permissions that you have on this folder itself. We've got to have the permissions set on our web server that allow us to write and read from that file, from that count.txt file that we just created. So we want to go make certain here, and on your home development machine this is relatively easy because you actually installed everything, so obviously you have all the permissions you need to read and write to these files. You have full control over anything that's inside that file, which is good. On your web server, it's going to be a little different. You're going to have to run what's called a chmod command. And chmod is a Linux command, or a Unix command. Probably 95% of the web servers out there are going to be Unix or Linux, and it's going to be chmod. And the minimum we want on that folder is 666. And if it's set permission 666, it's read and write by everyone that's hitting that server, which is exactly what we want. We want to be able to read and write to that file by all the different pages that hit it so they can upgrade the counts. Not very difficult to do. I'm just making certain that you understand that in order for this application to work correctly, you've got to be able to read and write to that count.txt file. So we want to make certain that we have a minimum of 666 on that file once it's uploaded to our web server. Very, very important. So make sure that you get that done. Like I said, on your home development station, it's not an issue. You're going to have those kind of permissions already on that folder structure because you actually set up this machine. Just make certain it's on the web server when you upload that file. And again, it's not hard to do. You may have to hunt around a little while or ask the support center how you change permissions on files into your web root. but it's not difficult to do. And for instance, the one that I use Bluehost and HostGator. You can actually just right click on the file itself, and one of the pop-ups is permissions, and it allows you to select read and write access or full control. Alright, so we've got all the base work done now. For this particular tutorial, we've completed all the base work. We've talked about the XAMPP web server. Make sure that that's on your machine, how you can go about making certain it's there, make certain it's running as we're going through these tutorials. We created our 4 web pages, our directory structure for our web root, and we actually created the text document, the count.txt, which is going to store the numbers from our count. So in part 2 of the tutorial, we're going to create the PHP file that actually performs the count on those actual web pages. And I was going to originally do this as just a very simple page counter, but I think I'm going to give you a demonstration of both, a very simplistic counter on one count, and then I think we're going to follow it up with a little more complex counter that you can actually have an admin area in. So you can not only do all the counts on the pages, but actually have a little admin area where you can actually see what each page individual count for each individual page is. Instead of just the overall counts total, we'll actually build a second script that will count each individual page. So not only we have total counts, but individual page counts. So I look forward to seeing you in part 2 of the tutorial.